are we, Mr. A?
Oh, Mr. C, we're at the University of East Anglia.
University?
Yes, Mr. C, a seat of learning not unlike the School of Athens, founded by Plato. Look at the architecture, look at the buildings, Mr. C, look at the amphitheatre. Reminds me of the Lyceum, founded by Aristotle.
Aristotle?
Aristotle, Mr. C, you remember, he influenced St. Thomas Aquinas and his natural moral law.
So, what is natural moral law, Mr. A?
Natural moral law, Mr. C, I would say there are three elements to it. Firstly, there is the natural law element that has its roots in ancient thinking. There are laws within nature that govern our moral behavior. Secondly, there is the Christian element, which has its root in the teaching of early Christians. We have an ultimate purpose, which is to worship God and to be with God. And thirdly, there is the vision of St. Thomas Aquinas, which brought together both ancient and Christian thinking.
So, Mr. A, is St. Thomas Aquinas the father of natural moral law?
Well, yes and no, Mr. C. It certainly emerges as a distinct theory in his influential book, the Summa Theologica, during the 13th century in the Common Era, in which he presents a synthesis, a joining up of Christian thinking with ancient natural law. But he was highly influenced by the ancient thinkers, Sophocles, Aristotle, Cicero, St. Paul, and St. Augustine.
Wow, Sophocles?
Yes, Sophocles. The roots of natural moral law can be traced back to the 5th century before the Common Era, with the writings of Sophocles in his play Antigone. Antigone argues that the state cannot overrule the immortal laws of the gods, in this case, that the dead should be buried.
Immortal laws?
Yes, laws within the very fabric of nature itself, which are unchangeable.
Wow, I bet Antigone is a fun play. So how did Aristotle top that?
Well, writing in the 4th century before the Common Era in his Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle opposes Plato's dualism and identifies goodness in the fulfillment of purpose or final cause found in nature. Human morality is subject to natural laws in the same way that fire is. It is fixed and cannot change. He said, that which is natural is unchangeable and has the same power everywhere, just as fire burns both here and in Persia.
Okay, was his mate Plato with him on this one?
Well, for once, Mr. C, you are onto something. Aristotle and Plato both reject the idea of nomos, that morals are part of a world of change, and side with physis, that morality is part of an unchanging natural order.
Physis? Like physics, you mean? Morality is fixed?
Mr. C, you astound me. Aristotle is ambiguous concerning how fixed this morality is, but this doubt is quelled by Cicero. Writing in On the Republic in the 1st century BCE, he says, "True law is right reason in agreement with nature. It is of universal application, unchanging and everlasting. It summons to duty by its commands."
No, I don't like that Cicero. He sounds a bit bossy to me.
Well, yes, he is, but not as bossy as St. Paul.
Oh no, wasn't he the geezer you told me about who experienced religious conversion on the road to Damascus and then wrote lots of letters?
Yes, Mr. C. He became a Christian and felt that we all have a duty, deontological, to achieve a sacred goal, teleological. He wrote about this and the power of God in one of his letters to the Romans.
Go on then, what did he say?
St. Paul said, "Ever since the creation of the world, his invisible nature, namely his eternal power and deity, has been clearly perceived in the things that have been made.
That's beautiful, Mr. A. So, natural moral law can hence be regarded as a theological, deontological, yet teleological, normative, ethical theory. So, was St. Paul the top man on natural moral law then?
No, Mr. C, that was the very great St. Thomas Aquinas.
So he's the big guy.
Yes, indeed, Mr. C, he is the big guy. Writing in his Summa Theologica, Aquinas identified a moral code within the purpose of nature, created by God as nothing else than an ordination of reason for the common good, promulgated by the one who is in charge of the community.
I think I get it. Tommy A had read all the ancient guys, including Aristotle, then put it all together in a new and distinct theory. Fantastic.
Writing in the 13th century CE, Aquinas was able to rediscover the Aristotelian ideas concerning nature, purpose, and reason, but was able to combine these with the Christian values of St. Paul and St. Augustine. The idea of purpose is central to natural moral law.
Do I have a purpose, Mr. A?
Your purpose is to shut up and listen, Mr. C.
Okay, but what is the human purpose?
Thomist natural moral law argues that the purpose of humanity is fellowship with God, and that this divine purpose is perceived through revelation from the Bible and through the use of human reason. Unlike the early Christians, however, Aquinas argues that humans are naturally good and tend towards this destiny according to their natural design.
Ah, so I'm naturally good, Mr. A, am I?
Well, in a way you are, Mr. C, but there are certain things that you have to do in order to be good.
I knew it. And what are they?
Well, they are called the 5 primary precepts. The fundamental laws for humanity to do good and avoid evil is supported by his 5 primary precepts. Number 1, preservation of the self and the innocent. Number 2, continuation of the species through reproduction. Number 3, the education of children. Number 4, life in society. And number 5, the worship of God.
Do we have to do all these things?
Well, that is a good question, Mr. C, and it is important to recognize that Aquinas argued that we each have our own individual divine purpose, which allows us to commune with God. There is also the question of how we humans might interpret these sacred laws within our own society.
So the 5 primary precepts aren't totally fixed.
Well, flexibility may be seen in that these fixed objectives are discovered through an observation of secondary precepts found in the legal systems of different societies.
Whew, looks like Tommy A had it totally sorted then, Mr. A. How would you finally summarise natural moral law then?
Okay, Summa Theologica by Aquinas explains that individual humans should learn their purpose through reason and revelation, and seek fellowship with God through intentions and actions, interior and exterior, in accordance with their true nature, which is good. This deontological, theological, normative theory is largely seen as a priori, being rooted in reason before experience, and features degrees of absolutism and claims to objectivity, being rooted in divine command.
Have you swallowed a dictionary, Mr. A?
It's only words, Mr. C. It's only words.
Words, Mr. A?
Yes, the immortal Bee Gees, Mr. C, but that's another story.
Was Thomas Aquinas in the Bee Gees, Mr. A?
No, he wasn't, Mr. C. He was good, but he wasn't that good.
Okay, so what kind of evaluative question might the students be asked about natural moral law?
Evaluative, Mr. C? Well, there's the discuss to what extent the theory is relevant to the needs of contemporary society type of question. Students in particular must show that they have understood the question and should refer back to it throughout their writing. A theory is relevant if it can provide practical guidance to individuals facing ethical dilemmas, and students must address the issue of what we mean by a contemporary society. It's multi-faith, multicultural, containing many groups, and so is pluralistic, and also seems to be highly materialistic. But of course you'd know about that, wouldn't you, Mr. C?
Yes, Mr. A, but briefly, how would students structure their answer?
Okay, I would have an introduction showing that I've understood the question, stating what is required. I would then take any strengths concerning the relevance of the theory and establish how significant that strength is. Following this, I would similarly evaluate the weaknesses. I would then be able to conclude, on balance, whether the theory was relevant to the needs of contemporary society or not.
Just give us a flavour of the strengths then, Mr. A.
Well, okay. Firstly, it does provide clear guidance through the primary precepts, so clear that it has provided the basis for the Catechism of the Roman Catholic Church. Roman Catholicism is the dominant Christian denomination in Britain today, and so certainly must be relevant to the needs of Roman Catholics in the UK today. You could also argue that the values of natural moral law are still the dominant values within our culture. When we say that someone is behaving immorally, you will likely find that their behavior goes against some aspect of natural moral law. Also, unlike utilitarianism, it clearly is an ethic with a heart that cares about the future of the species and would not allow horrendous deeds to take place. These are significant strengths.
And the weaknesses?
Well, Mr. C, some would argue that it's outdated and so is not relevant to the needs of contemporary society. The application of natural moral law to sexual ethics, for example, has caused much controversy. If everything has a natural purpose, then the purpose of sex is procreation. This means that non-procreative sexual practices, such as masturbation and gay sex and sex with a condom, are branded as deviant. This, of course, alienates many groups in society for whom it would not seem to be relevant. Indeed, its Christian root would seem significantly to alienate the many non-Christians in Britain today. There is also the criticism that natural moral law is too prescriptive, too legalistic, and so denies moral autonomy to the individual. Nietzsche describes natural moral law as a slave morality, and many atheists and humanists find the divine command element to be limiting. It also seems to be guilty of the naturalistic fallacy and has even been criticized as simply being a descriptive ethic and not a normative ethic at all.
Well, that's a lot of weaknesses, Mr. A, and some of them do seem significant. I guess the students would need to back up their arguments with the wise words of philosophers.
Indeed, Mr. C, David Hume, Soren Kierkegaard, Alasdair MacIntyre, Elizabeth Anscombe, James Rachels, and others. They could all help, but the student will need to draw a clear conclusion supported by these sources. It may ultimately be argued that the needs of a pluralistic, multicultural society cannot easily be met by a theory which appears to be so dogmatic and inflexible. Aquinas might say otherwise, but he isn't here like you and I are at the University of East Anglia.
That's brilliant, Mr. A. Now I know all about university.
No, Mr. C, I hope you know about natural moral law.